If I told you that the Dark Lord who forged the One Ring, the great flaming eye of malice that basically defined the entire fantasy genre for the 20th century.
Right, the ultimate big bad.
Exactly. If I told you he started out his literary life as a giant magical cat.
A giant
A
cat.
literal giant cat who, like, forced elves to wash his floors and turn a spit roast of fat mice.
Fat mice, yeah.
You would probably think I was reading you a piece of deeply bizarre, surrealist fan fiction.
I mean, it does sound exactly like some weird internet fan fiction.
It really does. But today, we are not looking at fan fiction. We are stepping right into the messy, chaotic, and just incredibly surprising workshop of J.R.R. Tolkien himself.
Yeah, we really are.
We're digging deep into the original 1917 draft of what would eventually become his most, sacred foundational romance.
The Tale of Beren and Tinúviel.
Exactly, found within the pages of the Book of Lost Tales Part 2.
And, it is just a remarkable text to study, precisely because it completely shatters that illusion of the inevitable masterpiece.
Right, like it was just handed down from on high.
Exactly. When you read the published, polished Silmarillion, the epic of Beren and Tinúviel, it feels like a marble statue.
Yeah, perfectly carved, very somber.
Somber, yeah. Carrying the weight of thousands of years of ancient history.
But this draft isn't like that at all.
Not even close. Christopher Tolkien, who edited and compiled these early manuscripts, he actually refers to this specific era of his father's writing as a manuscript jigsaw.
A manuscript jigsaw. I love that term.
Because he was working with texts written in ink over erased pencil.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, margin notes everywhere, shifting names. What we are exploring today in this deep dive is the raw, unpolished bedrock of the legendarium.
It's basically a world in flux.
Exactly. It's a living draft
Yeah.
where the grand high fantasy of Middle-earth it clashes violently with a much darker, wilder, almost Brothers Grimm-style fairy tale.
Yeah, Brothers Grimm is the perfect way to describe it. So for you listening, I want you to just grab a warm drink, settle in, and recalibrate your expectations of Middle-earth.
You're going to need to.
Because you already know the sweeping tragedies of the First Age, right? The doom of the Noldor, the epic clashes of Balrogs and dragons.
Yes, sure, the classic stuff.
But here, the names are slightly different. Like, Beren and Tinúviel are Beren and Tinúviel.
Right.
And the tone is radically transformed. So our mission today is to explore this wildly unexpected draft.
It really is wild.
But to truly grasp the weight of this tale, I mean, we can't just jump straight into the romance.
No, you really can't. You'd be missing half the point.
We have to start with the in-universe framing device Tolkien uses to actually tell the story.
Yeah, the frame narrative.
Because the contrast between the world of the storyteller and the story being told is just staggering.
It really is. The framing narrative is perhaps one of the most poignant elements of Tolkien's early mythos. He places us in a location called the Hall of Play Regained.
Hall of Play Regained, just the name itself is so evocative.
Right, and this is situated in Cortirion, which is a town on the lonely isle of Tol Eressëa.
Okay, so an island sanctuary.
Exactly. And the atmospheric description Tolkien provides here is deeply, deeply evocative. He paints this picture of a sudden winter encroaching on the island.
So it's getting cold.
Very cold. The gardens draw on the sparkling mantle of white snows. The fountains freeze and are stilled.
Wow.
The bare trees stand silent, and the sun splinters upon long facets of hanging ice.
That's beautiful. It sounds like almost like suspended animation.
Suspended animation is exactly it. It's a frozen sanctuary.
Yeah.
And inside this cozy, fire-lit hall, surrounded by playing immortal elven children, sits a human wanderer, named Ariel.
Ariel. And he is such a fascinating surrogate for us as the reader, and honestly for Tolkien himself, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Because here he is, this mortal man who has somehow navigated his way to this magical, immortal island. And the elven children specifically, there's a little girl named Vianney and a boy named Ossir.
Right.
They climb onto his knee. And they don't want to hear about ancient elven history.
Oh, they're bored of that.
They want to hear about men. They ask Ariel about the Great Lands, about his home. And specifically, little Vianney asks if he had a garden with poppies and pansies like she does.
Such an innocent question.
So innocent. And Ariel's response is just, it's a gut punch of bleak, mortal reality.
It really is a gut punch.
He tells these immortal children that his home was an old town of men with a crumbled wall.
Yeah.
And he says his mother died in a cruel and hungry siege.
A cruel and hungry siege, that phrasing.
Right. And his father was slain in a bitter fight about the walls. And he himself was made a bondslave before finally escaping to the sea.
The juxtaposition there is deeply intentional, and honestly, it's deeply tragic.
Yeah.
You have the devastating, violent darkness of Ariel's mortal life. I mean, war, slavery, starvation, the violent death of his parents.
It's horrible trauma.
Utter trauma. And that's starkly contrasted with the cozy, fireplace-lit sanctuary of an elven nursery.
Where the primary concern is like the blooming of pansies.
Exactly. And we really cannot separate this narrative frame from the reality of Tolkien's life when he was writing it.
Which was 1917, right?
Right, 1917.
Yeah.
He was convalescing from trench fever.
Oh, man.
A fever he contracted during the horrors of the Battle of the Somme.
One of the bloodiest battles in human history.
Exactly. He had seen his closest friends slaughtered in mechanized warfare. So when Ariel describes a cruel and hungry siege, that is the industrialized meat grinder of World War I.
That context changes everything about how we read this.
It really does.
Yeah.
Ariel seeking the Lonely Isle is basically Tolkien seeking Faerie.
Seeking an escape.
Yeah, a place of beauty, history, linguistic purity, as an escape from a world that had seemingly just gone completely mad.
So Ariel is essentially like a shell-shocked veteran finding himself suddenly transported into a magical, untouched nursery.
That's a perfect analogy.
And the elven children, they have absolutely no conceptual framework for mortal suffering of that magnitude.
None at all.
It saddens them, of course, and they quickly pivot. They're like, let's hear a sea tale instead.
Change the subject quickly.
Right. But this is where the dynamic of the framing narrative really caught my attention. Because instead of a gray-bearded elven scholar, pulling a dusty tome from a grand library.
Right, the usual trope.
It is the elven child, Vine, who sits up, claps her hands, and volunteers to tell the foundational epic of their people, the tale of Tinúviel.
Yes.
What does it say about this society that a child is the keeper of their most profound myth?
Well, it speaks volumes about the nature of the society Tolkien was constructing here. By making a child the storyteller, Tolkien establishes that this history isn't relegated to some dry academic text.
It's not locked away in an archive.
No, it is a living, breathing oral tradition. It is a fairy tale in the truest sense of the word.
A story told around the hearth.
Exactly. Passed down through generations. It's so ingrained in their cultural DNA that even the children know its cadence and its sorrow. It emphasizes that for the elves, their history and their mythology are identical.
They're one and the same.
And both are fundamentally tied to art, song, and spoken word. Furthermore, Vieng claims a direct, almost mystical authority over the text itself.
Right. She says she saw them.
Yes.
Yeah.
She tells Ariel that she actually saw the heroines Gondolin and Tinúviel with her own eyes when she was journeying by the way of dreams in long past days.
Journeying by the way of dreams.
Yeah.
That detail is so brilliant because it blends history with, like, dream logic. She didn't read about them. She witnessed them through a mystical vision.
Yeah.
And this sets the stage perfectly for her story, which she begins not with Beren, but by establishing the incredibly potent magical lineage of Tinúviel herself.
She starts with the parents.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way she describes Queen Gondolin, who, if you're a lore fan, you will immediately recognize as the prototype for Melian from the published Silmarillion.
Melian the Man.
Yeah. Her description is just dripping with fairy tale aesthetics. She describes her as slender, with very dark hair, pale skin, deep eyes, clad in filmy black garments, jet-spangled and girt with silver.
Very ethereal.
Super ethereal. But the crux of her identity isn't just that she's a beautiful elf. The text explicitly states she is a sprite that escaped from Lorien's gardens before even Kor was built.
And the terminology Tolkien uses here is so vital for understanding the mechanics of this early universe.
How so?
Well, Vian refers to Gondolin as a fae, or a sprite, and she explicitly notes that she was not El or woman, but of the children of the gods.
Okay, so she's divine.
Right. Now, in the later codified legendarium, we would understand her as a Maya.
An angelic being.
An angelic being of the same order as Gandalf or Sauron, exactly. But here, in 1917, the language is far more rooted in Victorian and Edwardian fairy lore.
Ah, I see.
She wanders the wooded places of the world accompanied by nightingales that literally sing her power into the environment.
That's a great image.
Her magic is ancient, it's primordial, and it's deeply tied to dreams, twilight, and slumber. She is essentially a localized, nature-bound divinity.
And her meeting with Tinwallant the elf, who will eventually become King Thingol?
Info, yeah.
That meeting is where the story fully embraces that hypnotic, almost dangerous fairy tale logic.
Oh, totally.
So Tinúviel is the leader of this massive tribe of Eldar, right? They're participating in this grand divine march across the world following the god Aromi.
A great journey.
The Great Journey. But he hears the song of Gwendolyn's nightingales coming from the woods, and the text calls it the most beautiful music he had ever heard.
So alluring.
So alluring. So what does this great responsible leader do? He just strays aside from the host to look for the birds.
Just wanders off.
And the text notes that it wasn't a moment he hearkened, but many years, and his people sought him in vain.
Right, and this is a classic folkloric motif that we often refer to as fairy time.
Fairy time, yeah, like Rip Van Winkle.
It's exactly like that. You see it in Celtic mythology, too, where a mortal steps into a fairy mound, or the other world,
Right.
and they spend what feels like a single evening dancing or listening to music, only to emerge and find that centuries have passed in the mortal realm.
Wow.
Tolkien applies this motif to an elf meeting a divine being. Tinúviel steps out of the linear progression of his people's journey to Valinor, and he steps into this suspended, dreamlike eternity of Gwendolyn's presence.
I have to say, though, I have to point out the objective comedy of this scenario from the perspective of his followers.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Right. Imagine being one of Tinúviel's people for a second. You are on the most important march in the history of your race, led by a literal god.
Yep.
Your king steps into the bushes because he hears a bird, and he just never comes back.
I'll be right back, guys.
Just gonna check out that bird. You wait, you search, and eventually the host just has to shrug and keep walking across the continent without him.
It highlights a whimsical, almost absurd element that Tolkien largely ironed out in his later revision.
Yeah, Thingol gets a lot more dignified later on.
He really does.
Yeah.
But here, Tinúviel finally finds Gwendolyn lying in a bed of leaves. He is utterly captivated. He bends down to touch her hair, and in doing so, he snaps a twig with his foot.
Oh, no.
And the snapping of the twig breaks the spell of stillness. She runs away, laughing softly, dancing just out of his reach.
Very playful.
Extremely. She leads him deeper and deeper into the woods until a swoon of fragrant slumbers falls upon him.
A swoon of fragrant slumbers.
He collapses face downward beneath the trees and sleeps for a very great while.
Wow.
And this isn't just a physical sleep, you know. It is a spiritual transformation.
Like an awakening, almost.
Exactly. When he wakes, his desire to rejoin the great march to the light of Valinor is gone. He's entirely bound to the twilight and to Gwendolyn. They marry, and they become the king and queen of the lost elves of Artenor.
And this geographical and cultural isolation creates a massive, massive divide in Tolkien's world.
It's the central conflict, really.
Because Tinúviel becomes the king of what the text calls the Ilkirindi. Now, for those of you listening who are deeply versed in the lore, you know how crucial the light of the two trees is to the metaphysical hierarchy of the elves.
It defines everything.
It really does. The text here explicitly defines the Ilkirindi as Eldar, who never had beheld Valinor or the two trees or dwelt in Kor.
They never saw the light.
Right. And because they never experienced that divine illumination, their entire physiology and culture are different. They are described as eerie and strange beings, knowing little of pure light or high musics. Their art consists of dark songs and chantings of a rugged wonder that faded in the wooded places.
Exactly. The Ilkirindi are woodland beings of the twilight. They are wilder, they're more primal, and they're deeply suspicious of the outside world.
Very isolationist.
Heavily isolationist. Their kingdom, Artenor, is completely hidden, protected by Gwendolyn's divine magic.
Like the girdle of Melian later on.
Precisely. She weaves spells of bewilderment about the paths so that none can tread them easily, actively keeping the evil forces of Melko at bay.
Melko being the early name for Morgoth.
Right. And within this hidden twilight sanctuary, this divine mother and this wild twilight elf father have a daughter, Tinúviel.
And this lineage is everything. Because of Gwendolyn, Tinúviel is a half-divine being.
Yes.
Her agency, her immense magical capability, and her sheer fearlessness throughout this story, they don't come from nowhere. They stem directly from this pedigree.
She's a powerhouse.
She is. She is the daughter of a localized goddess, and we are told she has a brother, J.R.R, who is a master of the flute and woodland instruments, while Tinúviel's joy is in the dance.
The dance.
The text claims no names are set with hers for the beauty and subtlety of her twinkling feet. So we have this hidden, idyllic, fiercely protected realm, and now we bring in the intruder, the meet-cute in the hemlocks.
It is honestly one of the most visually arresting scenes Tolkien ever wrote.
It's stunning.
It's June, in the woods of Artenor. Tinúviel and Darren are playing in a shady glade filled with elms, beeches, and white hemlocks.
Sounds peaceful.
Very. The white umbels of the hemlocks are described as being like a cloud, with white moths flittering everywhere in the twilight.
Oh, wow.
Tinúviel is dancing in this silver pearly dress, and into this perfect, delicate scene steps a ragged wanderer from over the bitter hills, Beren.
Beren arrives.
Now, if we look at this through the lens of the later mythology that you're probably familiar with, we hit a monumental lore divergence right here.
This is the big one.
In the grand epic of the Silmarillion, the entire thematic weight of the romance relies on Beren being a mortal man and Luthien being an immortal elf.
Right. The tragedy of mortal death and the sacrifice of immortality. That is the core of the story.
But in this 1917 draft, Beren is not a mortal man.
And this is the detail that completely recontextualizes the story. The text states clearly, quote, "Now Beren was a gnome, son of Egnor the Forester." Now, obviously, we need to clarify what Tolkien meant by gnome in 1917, because he certainly wasn't talking about ceramic garden ornaments with pointy red hats.
No, definitely not garden gnomes. It's a fascinating piece of linguistic history, actually.
I'd love to hear it.
In Tolkien's early translation framework, he used the English word gnome to represent the Noldali, or the deep elves.
Okay, the Noldor.
Right. He derived this from the Greek root gnome, spelled Gnome, which means thought, intelligence, or wisdom.
Ah, because the Noldali were the wise ones.
Exactly. They were the most skilled, inventive, and knowledgeable of the elven kindreds. He was attempting to reclaim the word from its Paracelsian association with earth elementals.
Oh, that's really ambitious.
It was. But he eventually abandoned it entirely and just used Noldor because the cultural baggage of the word gnome in English fairy tales was just way too strong to overcome.
Yeah, it's hard to read gnome and not picture the little guy with a fishing rod.
Right. So Beren is an elf of the Noldali kindred. But crucially, he is a specific kind of elf that Tinwellant and the woodland Ilkerindi absolutely disguise.
And the text sets up this deep, historical, almost systemic animosity between the secret elves of the woods and the gnomes.
Yes.
It references the evil deeds of the gnomes at the Haven of the Swans, which is the early conceptualization of the kinslaying at Alqualandi.
A huge lore moment.
Yeah, where the Noldor slaughtered their fellow elves to steal their ships. Furthermore, the text notes that the lies of Melko ran among Beren's folk.
They're tainted by association.
Exactly. To the Ilkerindi, the gnomes are kinslayers. They're traitors who brought the wrath of the dark gods back to Middle-earth. They view them as cruel, faithless, and inherently dangerous.
And this prejudice forms the central dramatic tension of their very first encounter.
Let's set the scene.
So Beren, wandering lost and ragged, is utterly mesmerized by Tinúviel's dancing. He is so enchanted that he loses all caution and steps heedlessly out of the shadows and into the open moonlight.
Just completely entranced.
Darren, who is playing his flute, sees Beren's face. He immediately recognizes the physiognomy or the attire of a gnome, drops his flute in sheer terror, and screams.
Oh, no.
He yells, "Flee! Flee, or Tinúviel! An enemy walks this wood." And then Darren just abandons his sister and bolts.
He just runs away. It is a remarkable collision of worlds. It's like a fairy tale Romeo and Juliet, but instead of two rival noble houses in Verona, you have ethereal twilight fairies clashing with a rugged, war-torn Noldoran survivor from the harsh, bitter hills.
It's a great setup.
And there's a tiny, brilliant detail Tolkien drops into the description of this glade that I have to highlight.
Oh, what's that?
He mentions that Tinúviel didn't mind the white moths fluttering around her, but she didn't love beetles, and, quote, "Spiders will none of the Eldar touch because of Ungoliante."
Ah, yes, Ungoliant.
You already know Ungoliant, right? The primordial cosmic horror of a giant spider who devoured the light of the two trees.
The ultimate terror.
Tolkien inserts this massive piece of cosmic mythological trauma into a passing sentence about a woodland fairy avoiding bugs. It's so casual.
It grounds the whimsy in a universe that has experienced literal apocalypse.
It's a perfect example of how Tolkien's world building operates on multiple strata simultaneously. Even in a scene of pastoral romance, the shadow of ancient evil is present in the psychology of the characters.
Yeah. So back in the glade, Tinúviel is terrified by her brother's warning, and she hides under a giant hemlock leaf.
Like a literal fairy.
The text beautifully describes her as looking like a spatter of moonlight shimmering through the leaves. Beren tracks her, finds her hiding, and gently touches her arm.
Which is a mistake.
The contact terrifies her, and she runs away swiftly into the dark.
But Beren is captivated. He stalks the woods of Artenor for days, growing wild, hungry, and lonely, desperately calling her name Tinúviel. Tinúviel.
He's down bad.
He really is. Eventually, she observes him from afar and realizes he isn't the cruel, faithless monster her society tells her the gnomes are.
Right, he's just a guy. She sees he is kind, bewildered, and simply wants to see her dance again. The tension slowly dissolves, and in a deeply touching sequence, she emerges and actually teaches him how to dance the way the elves of Artenor dance.
Which is a profound moment of cultural exchange, if you think about it.
Very much so.
The war-torn, exiled Noldor, learning the delicate twilight dances of the hidden Ilkrindi. It is a brief window of innocence before the narrative takes a sharp, brutal turn into danger.
Because the romance is now established.
Right. But Beren, this ragged wanderer of a hated race, must now do the most terrifying thing any suitor can do.
Meet the parents.
He must present himself to her parents. Which brings us to the throne room and the inciting incident of the entire epic. The outrageous bride price.
The bride price.
Tinúviel brings Beren across the magical stream and down into the deep, cavernous halls of King Tinúviel and Queen Gondolin. Beren is completely out of his element, totally abashed by the subterranean grandeur.
Yeah, he's basically a feral woodsman at this point.
And Tinúviel is instantly furious to see a gnome standing in his hidden sanctuary.
The king's prejudice is palpable. He looks at Beren's ragged appearance and his Noldoran heritage with sheer disdain. He demands to know what this wild elf of the shadows could possibly want in his court.
And Beren steps up.
He does. Finding a sudden wellspring of courage, he looks the king in the eye and boldly declares, "I desire thy daughter Tinúviel, for she is the fairest and most sweet of all maidens I have seen or dreamed of."
You have to admire the sheer audacity of it.
It takes guts.
He is standing in enemy territory, entirely vulnerable, and he just asks for the hand of the half-divine princess.
And the reaction of the court is devastating.
Oh, it's brutal.
They don't draw swords. They laugh. The entire court mocks him.
That's worse than swords.
It really is. Tinúviel treats this earnest declaration as a massive, uncouth joke from a lesser being. He decides to use his power to humiliate Beren.
Yeah.
He says essentially, "You want to marry my daughter? Fine. Just bring me a little boon. Bring me a Silmaril from the Iron Crown of Melko."
A little boon. We have to pause to analyze the sheer arrogance and cruelty of this demand.
It's off the charts.
You already know the Silmarils are the atomic bombs of Middle-earth's cosmology. They are the most precious, magically potent jewels in existence, containing the trapped, unmarred light of the two trees.
Yep.
And Melko, the ultimate Dark Lord, the Morgoth, wears them on an iron crown that never leaves his head, sitting in the deepest pits of an impenetrable hell fortress.
Exactly.
The text itself states explicitly that no one in the world, or fae or elf or man, could hope ever to set finger even on them and live.
So Tinúviel isn't setting a heroic quest. He is issuing an execution order disguised as a sarcastic punchline.
He is a terrible father in this moment.
Awful.
He's not protecting his daughter or testing Beren's worthiness. He is using the boy's love to send him to an agonizing death simply to get a laugh from his courtiers.
That's toxic.
Tinúviel instantly recognizes this. She bursts into tears, crying out to her father, "'Twas ill done, O my father, to send one to his death with thy sorry jesting." It's incredibly cruel. Is this a common thing in mythology?
It is cruel, but it is deeply rooted in folklore. The motif of the impossible task set by the father-in-law is ancient.
Like what?
Well, you see it in Greek mythology with King Peleus sending Jason to fetch the Golden Fleece.
Oh, right.
Or in the Celtic Mabinogion, where the giant Isbadadin sets utterly impossible, lethal tasks for the hero Kolich just to win his daughter Olwen.
I see.
The father-in-law acts as the threshold guardian, driven by selfishness, prejudice, or a prophecy of his own doom. Tolkien is deliberately tapping into this mythic morphology, using Tinúviel to enforce the boundary between the Twilight Realm and the wider, darker world.
But the tone of the scene shifts so dramatically based on Beren's reaction.
Yeah, it does.
Because he doesn't cower and he doesn't accept the joke. He goes from a stumbling, lovesick dancer to a proud, furiously angry Noldoran warrior.
His pride flares up.
His pride as gnome flares up. He yells back at the king, "Strange nonetheless seem to me the customs of the woodland elves. Yet lo, I, Beren, a huntsman of the Noldoli, will fulfill thy small desire."
Thy small desire. I love that.
He weaponizes the king's sarcasm. He calls it a small desire and literally storms out of the hall, walking straight into the jaws of hell out of pure spite and pride.
And this impulsive pride propels the narrative out of the fairy tale woodlands and directly into the nightmare of Angamandi, the Iron Mountains, and the fortress of Melko.
Things get dark fast.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Beren wanders through horrific landscapes facing poisonous snakes, wolves, and the harsh elements. Eventually, driven by great hunger, he searches a deserted orc camp for scraps, only for the orcs to return and capture him.
Oh, perfect timing.
They drag him deep underground, straight before Melko himself.
Yeah.
And what Beren does next is utterly fascinating when compared to the noble, defiant heroes of Tolkien's later works.
Yeah.
He lies, profusely and shamelessly.
It is shocking in the best way possible because Melko is towering over him, angry, accusing Beren of being a renegade thrall and plotting treacheries.
Right.
And Beren, recognizing that defiant speeches about the light of Valinor will just get him tortured to death, pivots to pure groveling deception.
Survival mode.
Total survival mode. He lays the flattery on thick. He claims he hates men, praises Melko's splendor and glory, and begs for the humblest of jobs.
Yes.
He tells the Dark Lord that he is just a trapper of small animals and a snarer of birds who wants to catch fresh meat for Melko's table.
The pragmatism is striking, and the text offers a brilliant meta-commentary on why it actually works.
Oh.
The narrator speculates that perhaps the Valar inspired this speech, or perhaps Gwendolen cast a spell of cunning words upon him from afar.
Why does he think that?
Because, quote, flattery savored ever sweet in the nostrils of that Ainu.
Ah, vanity.
Exactly. Melko is blinded by his own cosmic vanity. It strokes his immense ego to believe that a supposedly proud Noldoran elf would willingly grovel and beg to serve him. He accepts the lie because he wants it to be true.
It's brilliant. Against ultimate evil, noble defiance is a luxury you can't afford. Deception is your only weapon for survival.
Precisely.
So Melko accepts Beren's plea and assigns him as a thrall in the kitchens. But he doesn't hand him over to an orc taskmaster. He hands him over to Tevildo, the Prince of Cats.
Tevildo. Tevildo is undeniably one of the most astonishing, bizarre, and captivating creations in the entirety of the Lost Tales.
The description of Tevildo is just phenomenal. Tolkien describes him as a mighty cat, the mightiest of all possessed of an evil sprite.
A demon cat.
He is coal-black, massive, and deeply evil to look upon. He has long, narrow, slanted eyes that gleam both red and green in the dark.
Terrifying.
His gray whiskers are as stout and sharp as needles. His purr sounds like the roll of heavy drums, his growl like thunder, and his yell turns the blood cold. And he and his feline subjects are the chief hunters of meat for Melko's table.
He operates almost like a demonic aristocrat. He holds court in an ill-lighted hall full of monstrous purrings where glowing yellow, red, and green eyes stare out from the shadows.
So creepy.
And the animosity between him and Beren is instant and visceral. Tevildo takes one look at Beren, narrows those glowing eyes, and declares, "I smell dog."
I picture Tevildo like a sadistic mob boss running a culinary empire in the depths of hell.
That's basically what he is.
The text notes that Beren was a lover of hounds in his wild home, so the magical, elemental hatred between dog lover and master cat flares up immediately.
Yep.
Tevildo mocks the very idea that an elf could catch mice better than a cat, but he decides to humiliate him with a test. He tells Beren to go catch 3 magic, fierce mice that infest his hall.
Magic mice.
These aren't normal mice. They are massive, wild demons kept by Tevildo for his own cruel, private sport.
And Beren is utterly humiliated by the task. He spends 3 miserable days hunting these demon mice and achieves nothing but a severely bitten finger.
Ouch.
Tevildo, highly amused by his failure, demotes him to the lowest scullion. Beren's grand quest for the Silmaril is reduced to scrubbing tables, washing floors, and turning roasting spits where fat mice are daintily cooked for the cat's feasts.
Washing dishes in hell.
It is a profoundly degrading, exhausting existence.
What strikes me here is the distinct flavor of the evil Tolkien is exploring. In The Lord of the Rings, the dungeons of Barad-dûr are places of absolute crushing despair, industrial fire, and mechanical industry.
Very mechanized.
Here, the horror is almost Lewis Carroll-esque in its whimsy. You are a kitchen boy for giant, talking, sadistic cats.
Yeah, it's surreal.
But as bizarre as that sounds, we have to talk about what this character eventually becomes. Because the evolutionary trajectory of Tevildo is the biggest conceptual bombshell in this deep dive.
It truly is. As Tolkien revised his mythology over the ensuing decades, his tone shifted.
Right.
He realized that a giant, talking, evil cat, while terrifying in a fairy tale context, was perhaps too whimsical, too folkloric for the grave, mythic epic he was developing.
It didn't fit the vibe anymore.
Exactly. He needed a lieutenant from Elko, a master of phantoms and wolves, a deceiver. So he took the narrative role occupied by Tevildo, stripped away the feline form, elevated the cosmic malice, and transformed him.
Drum roll, please.
Tevildo, the Prince of Cats, is the direct narrative ancestor of Sauron.
Sauron, the Dark Lord who forged the One Ring, who corrupted Númenor, who plunged Middle-earth into the War of the Ring, started out as a giant cat who made Beren turn a spit of roasting mice.
It's mind-blowing.
It fundamentally alters how you view the development of the legendarium. It makes you wonder why Tolkien specifically chose cats as the ultimate agents of malice in 1917. Was he just projecting a massive personal bias into his cosmology?
The short answer is yes. Yes, he was.
Really?
Tolkien had a well-documented distaste for cats. He found them aloof, cruel, and selfish, whereas he had a deep love for dogs.
So he was just a dog person.
A massive dog person. In this early draft, he takes a personal preference and scales it up to a mythological absolute. The eternal natural animosity between cats and dogs is given a grand cosmological origin story right here in the dungeons of Engamundi.
That is hilarious. But while Beren is getting bitten by magic mice and scrubbing floors for the feline prototype of Sauron, we have to cut back to Artenor. Because Tinúviel's not sitting around waiting for a hero to save her. She absolutely refuses the role of the passive damsel in distress.
Her agency in this section is remarkable. Tinúviel learns from her mother's divine magic that Beren is alive but enslaved by Tevildo. She makes an immediate unilateral decision that she must go and succor him. Her mother, Gondolin, warns her it is madness, and her brother, Darin, outright refuses to help her.
Classic sibling betrayal.
In fact, Darin is so appalled by her plan that he snitches on her to King Tinúviel.
Which prompts King Tinúviel to overreact with the most aggressively fairy tale architectural flex imaginable.
Oh, the treehouse.
To stop her from leaving, he builds a three-cornered wooden house high up in the branches of the largest tree in the forest, a massive three-trunked giant beech called Hiralorn.
Yep.
He locks his daughter inside this treehouse and removes the ladders.
It is a quintessential princess locked in a tower trope. It's designed to enforce patriarchal control and keep the maiden safe and isolated.
Exactly.
But Tolkien immediately subverts the trope. He doesn't have a prince climb the tower to save her.
Oh.
Instead, Tinúviel uses her own inherent divine magic and the very items provided for her captivity to engineer her own breakout.
It is a masterclass in magical problem-solving. Let's analyze exactly how she pulls this off, because the magic system Tolkien uses here reveals so much about his philosophy of language.
It's fascinating.
She asks her guards for three things: a silver bowl of water drawn at midnight, a gold flagon of wine brought at noon by someone singing, and a tiny loom crafted by her brother Darin.
This scene is a profound demonstration of linguistic and sympathetic magic. For Tolkien the philologist, magic isn't a flash of light from a wand.
No.
It is deeply tied to history, to the elements, and above all, to language and song. Tinúviel mingles the water and wine. As the liquid lies in the gold bowl, she sings a song of growth.
Okay.
As it lies in the silver bowl, she sings another song, explicitly naming the longest things on earth.
And the specific things she names are incredible. She invokes the beards of the Indravangs, the tail of Carcharos, the great wolf, the sword of Nan, the chain Anganu that Ollie and Tulkas made to bind Melk, and finally, the hair of Uinen, the lady of the sea that is spread through all the waters. She isn't just making a wish, she is drawing on the deep lore of the universe. How does this mechanism actually work in Tolkien's mind?
She is utilizing sympathetic magic. The idea that like produces like.
Oh, I see.
By naming the longest things that have ever existed in the history of the world, she is conceptually borrowing the attribute of length and weaving it into her spell.
That is so smart.
It's very reminiscent of the Finnish Kalevala, a text Tolkien loved, where the wizard Vainamoinen sings things into being, and where knowing the origin and history of a thing grants you power over it.
Wow.
So when Tinúviel washes her hair with this enchanted water and wine while singing a third song of uttermost sleep, the magic manifests physically.
And the physical manifestation is wild. Her hair, which is dark and finer than twilight, begins to grow at an exponential rate.
Just massive amounts of air.
After 12 hours, it completely fills the room like a dense black mist. It trails out the windows and blows about the massive tree boles in the morning breeze. It's a bit like Rapunzel, but if Rapunzel used her hair to manufacture a tactical stealth suit instead of just letting a guy climb it.
That is precisely the level of ingenuity she displays. She cuts the magical hair, spins it on the tiny loom, and weaves it into a misty black robe that is literally soaked with drowsiness.
A sleep suit.
This garment radiates magical slumber. With the vast amount of leftover hair, she twists a mighty rope, ties it to the trunk of Hiralorn, and slips down the tree light as a squirrel.
The escape is flawless. As she reaches the ground, the hem of her black sleep robe brushes against the guards stationed at the base of the tree, and they instantly collapse into a fathomless sleep.
Out cold.
She knocks out her captors with a woven piece of magic and simply dances away into the woods. It is a stunning display of power.
It really is.
But as she gets closer to the desolate mountains of night, reality sets in. She is a lone maiden entering the most dangerous, corrupted lands in the world. Her magic is potent, but she needs physical muscle, and she finds it in an unlikely ally, Juan.
Wandering near the dark lands, she encounters Juan, the captain of dogs.
The good boy himself.
The best boy. The text takes this opportunity to expand on the deep mythological lore of dogs versus cats.
Oh, this is great.
We are told that Melko bred the savage race of wolves and empowered the cats, but many free hounds roam the woods, fiercely independent and refusing to bow to the Dark Lord.
All right.
Juan is the swiftest, strongest, and most noble of all these free dogs.
And crucially, Juan has a deeply personal vendetta against Tevildo.
He sure does.
The text explains that Juan had once tasted the fur of Tevildo, and in that fight, Tevildo managed to slash him with his claws.
A bitter rivalry.
The Prince of Cats holds a bitter grudge and wants to see Juan destroyed. So when Juan hears Tinúviel's story and realizes she is a princess of the woodland fairies aiming to infiltrate Tevildo's fortress, he immediately recognizes the tactical advantage.
He's smart.
He helps her concoct an audacious con.
Juan is intensely intelligent. He knows that a frontal assault on a fortress filled with magical giant cats is suicidal. So they devise a heist. The plan is for Tinúviel to walk right up to Tevildo's gate and claim she found Juan lying sick, helpless, and dying in a dale nearby.
Thereby luring the Prince of Cats out into an ambush.
Exactly.
But this brings up a fascinating moral gray area. Tinúviel is a pristine elven princess, the daughter of a divine being. Yet she is instructed by a dog to walk up to the enemy and deliver a massive, bald-faced lie.
It is a remarkable moment. And the narrator, whether we attribute the voice to Vianney or Ariel framing it, actually pauses the story to defend her actions to the audience.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The text explicitly states, "Now all this that Tinúviel spake was a great lie. And maidens of the Eldar are not wont to fashion lies. Yet have I never heard that any of the Eldar blamed her therein. For Tevildo was an evil cat, and Melko the wickedest of all beings."
That's amazing. It's the philosophical justification that lying to the devil is not a sin.
Exactly.
Against ultimate metaphysical evil, deception ceases to be a moral failing and becomes a necessary righteous weapon.
It frames the upcoming encounter like a fantasy sting operation.
Juan is the muscle waiting in the ambush spot, and Tinúviel is the grifter walking into the casino to deliver the bait.
Perfect analogy. And this leads us to the infiltration of the fortress itself.
Right, let's talk about the cat castle.
Tinúviel's arrival at Tevildo's castle is incredibly cinematic. The fortress is built on a steep cliffside, falling towards the dark woods in a series of sheer terraces.
Very dramatic.
The main gate is positioned high up in the air, requiring the massive, unnatural leaping ability of the demonic cats just to reach it.
Okay, so it's cat-proofed. I mean, non-cat-proofed.
Right. Tinúviel, being an elf, cannot make that leap.
So she wanders around the lowest terrace and encounters the doorkeeper cat, Umuyen.
Umuyen.
The text notes he is huge, larger than any dog on Earth today, and she haughtily demands an audience with Tevildo.
The confidence.
I know. Umuyen, likely amused by this tiny elf, tosses her onto his back to carry her up the steep terraces to the gate.
But he underestimates her arsenal. Tinúviel is still wearing her magic cloak woven from the sleep hair.
Oh, right.
As Umuyen carries her, the magic begins to seep into his system. He stammers that a sudden mist is before his eyes, he staggers as if he's drunk, and before he reaches the top, he completely collapses into a dead sleep on the terrace.
Just falls right asleep.
Tevildo, who happens to be sunbathing nearby on the upper levels, witnesses this and is instantly furious.
Sunbathing! Of course he is!
Typical cat. He bounds down, grabs Tinúviel himself, and leaps back up into the castle.
And the casual cruelty Tevildo displays toward his own kind is chilling. He yells for his servants to bind the sleeping Umuyen and cast him off the sheerest, most jagged side of the cliff simply because the old cat fell asleep on duty.
Brutal workplace environment.
Very. It establishes exactly what kind of tyrant Beren is dealing with. Tevildo then throws Tinúviel into a room that serves as his private dining hall.
It is a grotesque holding cell. The room is full of bones, smells evilly of old meat, has no windows, and only a single heavily guarded door. But crucially, it features a small hatchway in the floor that looks directly down into the great cavernous kitchens of the fortress.
And this is where the tension breaks in the most chaotic way possible.
This is.
Tinúviel looks through that hatchway, and among the smoke and the giant cats, she sees Beren.
There he is.
He is grimed with ash and labor, stooping over a massive fire, looking miserable. And what does she do? Does she subtly try to catch his eye? Does she use telepathy?
Nope.
No. She sits on the sill of the hatchway and starts shouting her own name and her royal title at the top of her lungs. Am I not Tinúviel, Princess of Fairies?
It is an incredibly reckless, almost absurdly confident move.
It's exactly like a superhero breaking into the villain's lair, executing a perfect stealth infiltration, and then suddenly ripping off their mask and screaming their secret identity.
It is I.
Down in the kitchen, Beren hears the voice of the woman he loves echoing from the ceiling. He is so shocked he drops a massive pile of metal and earthenware pots with a deafening crash.
Which gets attention.
Tevildo, hearing the noise, snarls, "There trippeth that fool Beren the elf." But Tevildo's arrogance is his downfall. He is too distracted by the juicy gossip Tinúviel has brought to connect the dots between the elf in his kitchen and the fairy in his dining room.
Tinúviel plays her part perfectly. She delivers the lie with absolute conviction, telling Tevildo that Juan the Hound is lying sick and helpless in a dale not a mile from the castle walls.
And he buys it.
He buys it completely. Tevildo's hatred and vanity blind him to the obvious trap. The prospect of murdering his greatest rival while he is defenseless is too tempting.
Naturally.
He gathers two of his fiercest, most warlike thanes, including a savage cat named Oikoroi, and they slink out into the woods to execute the ambush.
So they creep through the trees, climb a high branch, and look down to see Juan groaning on the ground, seemingly on the brink of death. They pounce.
But it's a trap.
But the moment they are airborne, Juan springs the trap. He leaps into the air with a terrifying bang sound, catches Oikoroi mid-leap, and bites him through the back of the neck, killing the demon cat instantly.
Instant kill.
The other Zane takes one look at the dead Oikoroi and runs for his life, leaving Tevildo alone to face Juan.
And the ensuing fight is vicious and elemental. Juan manages to get Tevildo by the throat, pinning him. But Tevildo is incredibly powerful. His claws rake across Juan's face and pierce the hound's eye.
Oh, that's rough.
In the bloody struggle, Tevildo manages to wrench himself free and scrambles up a tall, impossibly smooth tree, trapping himself out of Juan's reach.
Standard cat evasion tactic.
Exactly. And it is here, bleeding at the base of the tree, that Juan dictates his terms of surrender. He demands that Tinúviel and Beren be handed over immediately.
Tevildo, realizing he is trapped, unfastens his magical golden collar, a symbol of his power and favor from Melko, and casts it down as a token of his surrender.
But that's not enough for Juan.
Juan knows this isn't enough. He demands the ultimate prize. He forces Tevildo to reveal the secret foundational spell that holds his evil castle together and binds the demonic spirits to the feline forms.
The core magic.
Once Juan extracts the precise words of the spell, he laughs until the dark woods ring, knowing the reign of the cats is over.
So Tinúviel takes the golden collar and runs back to the precipice of the castle. Standing before the massive gates, she speaks the unbinding spell in her clear, ringing voice. The linguistic magic of Melko is shattered by her utterance. The very foundations of the castle shake, the stones groan, and then the most spectacular visual transformation occurs.
This part is so good.
All the giant, terrifying demonic cats inside the fortress suddenly shrink down to puny, normal-sized house cats.
House cats.
Stripped of their dark magic, they are terrified, cowering and mewling before the elven princess.
It is the ultimate humiliation for these monsters. They go from sadistic demon lords to hissing, frightened strays in an instant.
Amazing.
Tinúviel commands these newly shrunk cats to release the prisoners from the dungeons. Out walks Beren, still wearing his soot-stained kitchen rags, carrying a meat knife, and looking utterly bewildered by the sudden collapse of the feline empire.
He missed the whole thing.
He did, and interestingly, he is leading another prisoner. A blind, aged gnome named Gimli.
Yes, Gimli. Now, for the lore enthusiasts listening, it is really important to note this is not the dwarf Gimli from The Lord of the Rings.
No, completely different Gimli.
This is a blind Noldoran elf with super acute hearing. This is a classic hallmark of Tolkien's creative process.
Reusing names.
Reusing names, yes, but also he loved to insert deeply specific named minor characters with distinct traits into a scene for only a few paragraphs.
Oh, right.
It gives the illusion of depth, implying a vast, untold history of other prisoners and other tragedies happening just beyond the margins of the main story.
That makes a lot of sense. So our heroes are reunited. Beren steps out into the light, amazed to see Tinúviel holding the golden collar, while a horde of tiny wailing cats scatters around their feet.
Quite the sight.
Tinúviel looks at him in his kitchen rags and says, "O Beren from beyond the bitter hills, wilt thou now dance with me, but let it not be here?" And they turn their backs on the ruined fortress and walk away into the woods.
It is a deeply triumphant romantic moment, and Tolkien actually uses the aftermath of this victory to give us a brilliant etiological myth.
An etiological myth.
Yeah, a story designed to explain a natural phenomenon in our primary world. Because Tevildo surrendered the secret spell to save his own life, Melko cursed him and banished the entire race of cats from his service.
Banish them.
The text says, "Nor have they since that day had lord or master, or any friend, and their voices wail and screech, for their hearts are very lonely and bitter. Yet there is only darkness therein and no kindliness."
Wow.
Tolkien essentially wrote an epic mythological origin story just to explain why neighborhood cats yowl outside your window at night.
It is so brilliantly petty. I absolutely love it. He weaponized his mythology against a mild domestic annoyance.
He really did.
But the story doesn't end with them walking off into the sunset. They've won a major victory. They defeated the Prince of Cats. They are back in the relative safety of the woods with Juan. But the shadow of the Silmaril still hangs over them.
The impossible task remains.
Exactly. The narrative drive is relentless. After wandering the woods for a time, Tinúviel naturally begins to grow homesick for the twilight realm of Artenor.
She wants to go home.
But Beren, driven by his Noldoran pride and his strict adherence to his oath, refuses to return. He tells her he cannot go back to King Tinwella and show his face without the jewel he swore to retrieve.
His pride won't let him.
He is bound to achieve the impossible or die trying.
And Tinúviel cannot bear the thought of him marching to his death alone, nor can she bear to leave him. So she hatches a plan that is undeniably the wildest, most macabre, and darkest scheme in the entire draft.
It is so dark.
She asks Juan to fetch the corpse of the giant cat, Oikoroi, whom Juan had killed during the ambush.
Ugh. This introduces a visceral, deeply unsettling fairy tale motif into the story, wearing the flayed skin of a slain beast to infiltrate the enemy's lair.
A skin suit.
A literal skin suit. It bridges the gap between the high, ethereal romance of the elves and the grotesque, primal magic of blood and bone. It demonstrates just how far the tone of this early draft is willing to push the boundaries of horror to emphasize the stakes.
So Tinúviel uses her fairy magic to literally hollow out the dead cat, and she sews Beren inside the giant skin.
So gross.
She uses her spells to shrink and shape the hide so that Beren fits perfectly, making him look exactly like a terrifying demonic cat of Melko's court. And once he is sewn in, she has to teach him how to act the part.
The juxtaposition of the grotesque disguise with the sheer physical comedy of her trying to train him is a wonderful narrative pressure release valve before the final climax.
It's very funny.
She teaches him how to sit properly, how to sprawl like a predator, how to step silently, and how to bound. Juan stands by, his hackles raised, his whiskers bristling in disgust, just watching an elf mimic his mortal enemy.
Juan is not impressed.
Not at all. But there are flaws in the disguise. Beren cannot replicate the deep, rolling purr of the demon cats, and the eyes of the skin remain dead and glassy. Tinúviel gives him the ultimate acting advice. Keep your mouth shut, don't look anyone in the eye, and you'll look very noble.
I can vividly picture this absurd scene. Tinúviel pulling his fake tail to correct his posture, while Beren stews in annoyance inside this sweaty, suffocating, horrific taxidermy suit.
The indignity of it all.
It is darkly hilarious, but underneath the humor, the tension is paralyzing. Because they aren't going back to trick a vain, manageable boss like Tevildo.
No.
They're turning their faces toward Angmandi. They're walking directly into the deepest pits of hell to stand before Melko himself.
The tonal shift as they enter Angmandi is palpable. The whimsy vanishes, replaced by oppressive, suffocating dread. They navigate the labyrinthine tunnels of the fortress, descending into the throne room.
The heart of darkness.
Beren, fully disguised as Oikoroi, slinks into the great hall and creeps directly under Melko's massive iron chair. The text drops a horrifying detail here. The floor beneath the Dark Lord's throne is covered in writhing, poisonous adders.
Snakes!
Snakes everywhere. Beren is trapped there, surrounded by snakes, absolutely terrified, frozen in place beneath the ultimate evil of the universe.
It is the pinnacle of dramatic irony. Melko, the all-seeing, all-powerful Ainu, is sitting on his throne, completely oblivious to the fact that the ragged gnome, who recently escaped his kitchens, is currently hiding inside a dead catsuit right between his feet, staring up at the Silmarils.
Right between his feet.
But while Melko misses the cat, his gaze does catch something else. He spots Tinúviel.
Tinúviel is flitting about the high, shadowed arches of the hall, wearing her bat-like cloak of darkness woven from her hair.
Yeah.
But Melko's perception is too sharp. His gaze locks onto her shifting shadow, and his voice booms through the hall, demanding to know who she is. He snarls, "Who art thou that flittest about my halls like a bat? How camest thou in, for of a surety thou dost not belong here?"
Busted.
And right at that moment of ultimate discovery, with the Dark Lord's wrath focused entirely on our heroine, that is exactly where this specific, tantalizing excerpt from the Book of Lost Tales leaves us hanging.
What an agonizing cliffhanger.
Yeah.
To have the tension dialed up to 11 and then just stop.
Just abruptly stop.
Yeah.
But what a journey we have covered today. Let's take a breath and synthesize the sheer scope of what Tolkien drafted here.
It was massive.
We started with a grieving, traumatized mortal wanderer finding solace in a cozy elven nursery. We moved to a magical moonlit dance in a glade of hemlocks, fueled by ancient cultural animosities.
Yeah.
We saw a woodland king make a sarcastic, lethal joke that sent a proud Noldor into the jaws of hell. We watched a half-divine princess weave a tactical sleep suit out of her own magically grown hair, team up with a legendary dog, and execute a flawless heist against a demonic prince of cats.
All in one story.
And we ended with our heroes sneaking into the Dark Lord's throne room, hiding in a taxidermy suit surrounded by venomous snakes.
It is a breathtaking, chaotic, and profoundly beautiful manuscript. Studying this draft reminds us that creativity, even for undisputed geniuses like Tolkien, is an evolutionary process.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, he didn't just sit down and invent the polished, solemn majesty of Middle-earth in a single stroke. He grew it, layer by layer, experimenting with folklore motifs, linguistic puzzles, and even his own personal prejudices, revising and refining the mythos over decades.
Trial and error.
The raw, messy energy of this 1917 draft is the fertile soil from which the great tree of his legendarium eventually grew.
And that is the ultimate takeaway for you as you dive into these texts. The next time you encounter a story that feels impossibly perfect, remember that somewhere in its history there is a messy, experimental draft filled with bizarre ideas that had to be carved away.
Very true.
Even the majestic, tragic epic of Beren and Luthien had giant talking cats before it had Sauron. And speaking of that incredible evolution, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over. If Tevildo the Prince of Cats eventually evolved into Sauron the Dark Lord, what does that tell us about Tolkien's foundational understanding of evil in Middle-earth?
That's a great question.
Is the core of his ultimate antagonist inherently feline? You know, solitary and manipulative, toying with its prey and utterly lacking in empathy? Or did Tolkien simply realize that a giant cat was a bit too whimsical for the apocalypse?
I wonder.
Keep the lineage of Sauron in mind the next time your house cat stares at you unblinking from across the room. They might just be plotting to steal a Silmaril.